Hello and welcome once again to Rush Lick by Lick episode 2. In episode 1 we talked about a little bit about the first album and how much I love the band and what these videos are kind of all about. It's just an examination of the music itself. Not necessarily, I'm not going to talk about how the band got together and all that stuff. That's been done to death. There are two different documentaries that you can go watch, both of them awesome, and find out what you need to know about that. This is an examination of the music itself. This is looking at primarily from the standpoint of guitar, how their early influences showed up in their music, and then how they how Alex in particular used common themes in his playing to use them later on in later albums. They were essentially the very same thing, but he would repurpose them in different ways, and they were really outstanding the way he did it. The one that I talked about last time was Alex's penchant for playing. He would fret a chord, but he would use open strings, which gives the chord a completely different flavor. This is a standard F sharp bar chord, right? And this is how Alex would play that same F sharp. Totally different flavor. So that now instead of just F sharp, it's F sharp 7 with a B. So same thing here. He would play a B. He would fret most of a B, but leave those top strings open. So what you wind up with is B with a suspended fourth. And then this is, here's your standard A. This is Alex's A, which is an A with a B in it, A add B. So very cool chord. And he used that quite often. He did that from the first album on through, I want to say the last time I heard it was on Snakes and Arrows. The last time I really paid attention to it was Snakes and Arrows the last time. I haven't really torn apart Clockwork Angels as much as I would like. I love the album, but right now I'm just enjoying listening to it. I haven't started learning the songs, little snippets here and there, but I haven't started learning them yet. Right now I'm just entranced with the magic trick. I don't right now want to know how the magic trick was done. So, but his penchant for using open strings started on the very first album with a song called Before and After, which is it's got a beautiful intro. And I've actually got turned on tonight, I've got my Boss ME50 over there, and I've got my ESP, but I've got some phaser going on because Alex was huge on using phaser in the first few albums. It was inescapable. You could not miss it. It was such a integral part of his sound in the early days. So and on the song Before and After, he used those open strings. He would chord part and then use open strings on the rest, and it was a really, really, really very cool sound. That's the first half of Before and After. I mean, it's got a mellow part at the beginning and it's got sort of a rocker part at the end. And great use. I mean, he does that often. He uses those open strings often, and they really give really cool flavors to some of the chord structures that he uses. And it helps to lay against some of the bass lines that Geddy's playing. Geddy's really moving that bass line all over the place, you know what I mean? So the chords that Alex uses tend to complement what Geddy's doing at the same time, and vice versa. Geddy's using those passing tones. He's using a whole scale, so he's not just playing thump, 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 1, 4, 5. He's not doing that. He's playing a lot. He's really busy. So the two really played off each other very, very well. That his use of open strings carried on for quite a few albums, quite a few. I would say that, gosh, the most prominent use of it was in, I'll say that his first use of, the first time it was very, very prominent was in, it wasn't, before and after was nice, but it wasn't so obvious. It was so pretty. He was doing a couple of different things on that song. He used, he started using harmonics. The very first notice of it that I caught was on Before and After, and he's going. And he's got some very cool effects on it, so it really, really gets a very, very nice sound, and it layers well over the. The next time we hear it, he does it a couple of times, very limited times on Fly By Night. We're going to talk a little bit more about Fly By Night. I wanted to talk a little bit more first about his use of those open strings. The next time we hear it, it's really, really obvious, and it's again, I think the first time that it's integral to the song. And that is on the song, The Fountain of Lamneth. And that's in the very opening. And that's a little out of control, but I got my overdrive cranked a little hard. Let's back off on that just a little bit, get a little less crazy. But it's the same thing. He's using those open strings again. And then he does it again. Later on in the song, on Caress of Steel, there's another great song called The Necromancer that is probably... Man, that's my favorite tune on the album, and he's got so many cool things about it that I really, really like. That one song in particular has a couple of very cool things on it. The intro riff that he's doing on that is just so sweet. He's doing. And then at the very end of the song, when our hero returns, we hear his use of open strings again, and he's fretting two strings and playing two strings open. So he's getting these really cool flavors of chords, and he starts with an E, a B, an A, and then back to B, back to E. But with the open strings that he throws in, it's unique the way he does it. Very nice. It opens the chord up, gives more possibilities for Geddy to come up with a much more melodic bass line. He's not just playing, he's not playing thump thump 1-4-5. He's just not doing it. And Alex has given him the room to explore where he can take that melody, where that bass melody can be. And the bass is much more melodic in Rush than in most other bands. Most other bands are just, the bass player's just kind of holding a root note down while the guitar player does all the flash and all the fire. And in Rush, it was kind of different. They would sort of switch off on who was doing flash and who was doing roots. So Alex would occasionally do that. He would hold the root chord down and let Geddy just go nuts with a bass line. Another prominent example, we're not going to get to it just yet, is on Hemispheres. In the very opening of Hemispheres, Alex is using those open strings again, and Geddy is just losing his mind. I mean, if you listen to the intro to Hemispheres, it's just insane. The bass line that Geddy's playing through the very first few minutes of that song is just nuts. It's just insane how much he's throwing into that one bass line is really nice. And Alex at the time is, you need to get down. That's my cat. My cat hates it when I play guitar. Alex is throwing in, those open strings again. The chord structure that Alex is using there with those open strings, it really gives a great flavor. And Geddy is playing all over those notes, and Alex is leaving him plenty of room to find all these really cool melodies that he's playing. Caress of Steel was different in a lot of ways. As big a difference as Fly By Night was to the first album, Caress of Steel was as different as Fly By Night. Caress of Steel was actually the first of the epics, right? The first time they tried a concept. And that concept fell flat on its face when audiences listened to it. No one got it. And I got to be honest with you, when the very first time I sat down and listened to side one of Caress of Steel, I didn't get it either. Fountain of Lamneth was, wow, was that weird? It was just so weird. Great playing, though, and some really beautiful stuff. Honestly, Caress of Steel has some really, really great stuff. It's just so weird. It was so different at the time. Nobody got it. The record company didn't get it. The audiences didn't get it. Other bands didn't get it. The guys didn't even understand it, I would assume, when they got done with it. But, wow, it turned out to be, without Caress of Steel, there would have been no 2112. That's all there is to it. 2112 was their last-ditch effort to try to stay relevant as far as music went, because Caress of Steel was just, it sold so poorly. They're touring on it, and no one's showing up. No one likes the music. No one likes the album. And Fly By Night wasn't, at the time, strong enough to support them through that third album, through Caress of Steel. So it was, I felt, you got to feel bad for them. They really thought the band was over at that moment. I mean, honestly. So they're, by the end of that tour, they're all thinking we need to go find, we need to go back home to Canada and find real jobs. That's how bad that album sold. The record company didn't like it. They didn't support it. The band's out touring on it. Nobody's showing up, and they're touring with Kiss and, and all these other acts and Ted Nugent, and nobody gets it. Nobody gets it. But it has some high points on it. The album itself does have some really strong songs. It has Bastille Day, which is, wow, that's just an awesome tune. It's got Lakeside Park, one of my favorites. Melodic and sweet. Alex is playing some really cool stuff on it. My favorite tune, though, on the album is not Bastille Day. It's actually a song in the Fountain of Lamneth suite, and it's called No One at the Bridge. And it's because, again, Alex uses an open string. He's fretting a chord, but he's using an open string at the same time, and he's modulating between an E minor and a B flat, which shouldn't work, but boy, does it work. This is what he's playing. See, now he's playing sort of an E with a suspended second, E minor 9 actually, E minor with an F sharp, and then he goes up to a B flat, which honestly shouldn't work. But again, he's got that G string, the G natural, droning out. And there's that open string changes the entire flavor of the chord. Now, at the beginning, the F sharp is sort of what I call that's the tension note in that, the F sharp is. And when he modulates it up to the B flat, the tension tone becomes the G natural, which the G natural's playing when he's down here in the E minor. But it's the F sharp that's really adding the tension in that chord. Then he modulates up to the B flat, and suddenly it's the G that's in charge now. It's that open string. He's got a firm grip, a firm grasp on how to make the most of using open strings. Yes, they do tend to kind of stay in the same key when he uses them, but each time he does it, it's a little unique. It's a little more unique than it was last time, and it's unique to the song that they're playing. What he's doing on Hemispheres is nothing like what he's doing on Before and After from the first album, and that's nothing like what he was doing on Caress of Steel. It's completely different. He's got that. He's got the ability to make those. Although he's using the same chords, they're unique to what he's doing, and for each album. And another one, another really good example of that is on Farewell to Kings when they're playing Xanadu. That very, that grand part at the very beginning. And again, there's that open string. He's using the open B and the open E and sort of droning on them. Almost a sort of a bagpipe-esque sort of thing, so that you always hear those two notes. And he incorporates them into what he's playing every single time, and every time he's playing it. When he modulates up, the beginning of that is a... And it modulates up to B. And each time it fits perfectly in the mood that he's trying to set. So good. Alex was so good at using those open strings. I kind of stole that. I can't use it as fluidly as he does. I've stolen that a couple of times for my own writing, but it's not the same. It's we all steal. All artists steal from each other. All musicians steal from each other. It's just the way it happens. The good ones borrow, and the great ones steal outright. Now we're going to talk about where those influences. Obviously, they were heavily influenced by Led Zeppelin on that first album, and a little bit on Fly By Night. Not as much. You hear it a little bit, but not as much. On the first album, you hear it a lot. You can hear Jimmy Page coming out of Alex's guitar. Because Alex is like every other young guitar player. You are a slave to your influences at first. Until you define yourself, you're sort of a slave to your influences. And one of the things that, one of the songs that actually reminded me of, a clear example of their influence, the influence of Led Zeppelin, was this one. Now that bears a more than striking resemblance to which is Heartbreaker by Led Zeppelin from the Zepp 2 album. Now, that's not he's not ripping him off really, but he's a slave to his influences. He's listening to this every day. Alex is listening to Led Zeppelin every day, and that's how he's learning how to play. And he's learning, from the other people that he was listening to at the time. But the most obvious one that I hear on that first album is I hear Jimmy Page a lot. I hear it a little bit on Fly By Night. As a matter of fact, if you listen to the song Beneath, Between, and Behind, he's using a lick that Jimmy uses right after Jimmy does that really cool guitar solo on Heartbreaker. After he uses that, after he goes through the guitar solo, he does this really neat lick that leads into the end of Heartbreaker and leads into Livin', Lovin', Made. Well, Alex repurposed that lick and turned it into Beneath, Between, Behind. Sounds suspiciously similar, doesn't it? That's because it is. Alex has got that lick rolling around in his head because he's been listening to Led Zeppelin pretty much nonstop since they came out. And that lick comes out of his hands, and it's filtered through Alex's brain and comes out a slightly different way. It does sound similar. It's not used in the same way though. He uses it as the meat of a song, right? He uses it as the actual thread that rolls the whole verse along, whereas Jimmy sort of used it as a transition from point A to point B. It wasn't really all that important to the song. Alex made it important to the song, but it is the same lick, basically. It's the same lick. One of my other favorites, and I didn't really get a chance to talk about it in the last one. We talked a little bit about Fly By Night, but not much. But one of my other favorites from Fly By Night has always been Anthem. That's just such a great song. And it's got such a unique, cool Rush opening. But it does, again, you can sort of hear a little bit of that Zeppelin influence in the intro. And the intro is this. It's Zeppelin-esque. You can't nail down a specific song, but it's got the spirit. It's got that spirit of Led Zeppelin, the single note line that he's playing, and those big giant power chords that roll back to the high E. Great, and I love the song. Really, I love the song for that intro and for the solo. It's just awesome. One of his best solos on the early albums. My favorite solo is still. Gosh, Here Again. God, I love that song. That's my favorite song on the first album. And it's probably my favorite solo from maybe the first three. My favorite guitar solo. The influences that they had, the Zeppelin influence, is really obvious on the first album. And then it's a little obvious on the second album. But by the time they get to Caress of Steel, they're Rush. Almost Rush. They're almost Rush. They're one album away from becoming Rush. Caress of Steel has some very unique things that no one else is doing at the time. Zeppelin certainly isn't doing it. You can still hear a little bit of Page's influence in Alex's solos and in some of his some of the riffs that he chooses. But for the most part, they're really weaning themselves off that Zeppelin sort of feel and sound and becoming their own band on Caress of Steel. And that's why the album did so poorly. It was them. The record company signed what they thought was a Zeppelin clone band after for the first album. And then when they got Fly By Night, they were like, what the hell is this? This isn't Zeppelin. What is this? There was By Tour and the Snow Dog, which seriously just an awesome song. Never gets enough credit. A really, really great song. And then by the time they got to Caress of Steel, that Zeppelin influence had sort of wiped itself off, and they were becoming the prog rock band that they truly wanted to be. And boy, it just didn't work. It fell flat. No one liked it. The record company, no one liked it. God, I didn't even like it the very first time I heard it. I liked Bastille Day a lot. I liked Lakeside Park a lot. I didn't really much care for I Think I'm Going Bald, but, you get what you get. So Madrigal is another one. Oh, no, I'm sorry. That's Farewell to Kings. Madrigal is Farewell to Kings. But I can't remember the rest of the songs. You see, I got the big giant Rush book sitting here on my music stand. This is my Rush Complete book. This is everything from the first album up to and including Signals. So I just got another copy of this. I taught guitar for many years, and I had a student who showed a great deal of promise, Patrick, who showed a great deal of promise and who loved Rush. And so I gave him my beloved, my coveted copy of Rush Complete. Well, my wife, Saint, that she has found me another one. I've been wanting that book back for years, but you don't ask back. You don't ask for a gift that important back. So I suffered through it. My wife found me one. So this is just a collection of stuff from like 75 to 2007. I don't remember, but it's just a collection of stuff. This is the one that is really most important to me. I'm here in what I call Rush Command 1, and I'm fully equipped with my official Rush picks. Right? So I'm super legit. My sister-in-law, Cassandra, gave me these. These are just awesome. I had to pull them out and play them. You know what I mean? So a couple of cool little pictures on them. There's Snakes and Arrows, which is, just a great, great, great album. And then obviously I've got 2112. They're slick picks, though. They don't have any sort of a contour. And my fingers get a little sweaty when I play. So I tend to just stick with my Dunlops because they don't fall out of my hand when I'm playing. The other thing that I have here that I sort of keep for inspiration, I got a poster of the boys up on the wall here with the double necks doing Xanadu. So that's mainly that's my great source of inspiration. One thing else that I have here, and this was a gift from my mother and father-in-law, Esther and Robert, and this is a signed picture, an autographed picture, and it's got the gold set of picks in it. But, I think they might have been a little offended that I never opened this thing to use the picks. And the problem was this was sent from Canada. It was sealed in Canada. So there's actual real Canadian air in there. I can't open it up. There's authentic Canadian air in there. I can't open that up. That would be wrong. I would love to get those picks out just to touch them and play with them and stuff, but I can't open it up. Besides, I just drool all over the picture, and who needs that, right? No one needs that. So this is part of my inspiration that I'm using. So the picks I got from my sister-in-law, which are just awesome. I just love these to death. Snakes and Arrows. It's got the 2112 thing. It's got a picture of the boys. You know what I mean? One of them is just a picture of the boys, which is pretty awesome. But they're a little hard for me to hold on to. They're slick picks, so I just like looking at them. I just have them on my desk to look at them while I'm playing, and I play with my Dunlops because they won't fall out of my hand. Fly By Night, I talked a little in the first video in episode 1. I talked a little bit about Fly By Night. Talked a lot about the first album. Talked a little bit about Fly By Night, and Fly By Night had some. I mean, there are actually a lot of reasons to love that album. That album's got a ton of great stuff on it. More than just the song Fly By Night, it's got a ton of great stuff on it. And it's so different from the first album. It was not what the record company was really expecting from them at the time. It wasn't what they wanted. Certainly wasn't what they wanted. They wanted Working Man, the sequel, and they didn't get that, so they weren't happy. The band was happy, though, and it was a great album. There was just a ton of great material on that album. There's no getting around it. The Zeppelin influence is there in smaller doses than it was in the first album. On the first album, man, it was like Zeppelin reborn. On Fly By Night, that influence started to sort of drain away a little bit, and they were becoming who they would eventually, wind up being. They were going to be a prog rock band, and it almost got them there. You know what I mean? It almost got them there. That album almost got them there. Well, that album led them to Caress of Steel. I think they just pulled the trigger a little too soon on the concept album. I don't think Fountain of Lamneth was the concept they really should have gone with. I'm a little dismayed that I didn't like it as much at first when I first started listening to it. It took me so long to find my way into a space where I could appreciate what they had done. But by the time I didn't hear that album first. The first Rush album I heard was 2112. That's the best prog rock album that's ever come out. Period. And by the time, and then when I heard Caress of Steel, I'm like, what the hell is this? What is the Fountain of Lamneth? I didn't get any of it. The rocker songs on it, though, the stuff that was on the B-side stuff, the stuff that wasn't concept, I thought was much better than the concept stuff, which is the exact opposite of 2112. The concept side of that album, side one, was way better than the non-concept side, but the non-concept side still had some really great songs on it. So, I mean, there's nothing to be ashamed of there. They put out some great music for that album, and it was truly outstanding. And hold on, my cat's losing her tiny little mind over there. Great concept stuff on 2112, not as great on Caress of Steel. The non-concept stuff on Caress of Steel was outstanding, though. Lakeside Park is still one of my favorite songs. I can listen to that over and over again. And Bastille Day, oh my gosh. Wow, what a song. And so much stuff going on in that. It's just crazy, man. I'm not going to talk about, in this episode, 2112. I think I'm going to have to devote an entire episode, one episode, just to 2112, because the concept side and the non-concept side, side one and side two, are so different in their net effect, right? Temples of the Syrinx has a much stronger effect than Something for Nothing, you know what I mean? Or Tears, you know what I mean? And those are great songs. I mean, that whole album to me is 100% gold. All of it. Passage to Bangkok, everything. Pure gold. Everything on that album. It's all killer and no filler in my mind. Everything on it. I can't say that about Caress of Steel. I can't even really say that about Fly By Night. I can't say that all of Fly By Night is killer. Most of it is. Not all of it. 2112, all killer, no filler. None. Like Moving Pictures. All killer, no filler. All of it just awesome. But I'm going to devote one episode, an entire episode, to 2112 to be able to cover the differences between side one and side two. And, I'm like a lot of you, the very first time I heard side one of 2112, I just was so freaked out. I'm looking at, I'm listening. The very first time I heard it, I was on my way to a Texas Rangers baseball game. I was a kid, driving down the road in my brother's pickup truck. We're on the way to a baseball game, and he throws this 8-track in of this band called Rush, and he shows me the 8-track and then pops it in. And we listened to all of, the Temples, the concept stuff, and then he pops it out because he didn't really like anything that was going to come up after that. He didn't like Something for Nothing or, any of those other songs. He didn't really like them. Well, I pulled the 8-track out, and I'm looking at the label on it. I'm like, it's 3 guys. How do 3 guys make this much noise, this much music? How does that happen? What are you doing so much different than everybody else that 3 guys can do this? That's just crazy. I didn't understand about double tracking and, studio tricks and stuff like that. I was just amazed at the overall sound that I was hearing coming out of the speakers. Just completely freaked me out. So, but yeah, one episode by itself for moving picture. I mean, for 2112, too tough to do in the context of another album. Same thing with. I'm not certain if I want to do Permanent Waves and Moving Pictures together, because Moving Pictures, there's just so much stuff on that album. Again, all killer, no filler. I kind of look at Permanent Waves that very same way. All killer, no filler. There's nothing. To me, there are no throwaway songs on either of those albums, Permanent Waves or Moving Pictures. There are no throwaway songs. Everything on there was just absolutely outstanding. I'm not certain I want to combine those two together, because I could just sit and talk about, every song on both those albums I was just lit up by, and learned everything that was on Moving Pictures, everything that was on Permanent Waves, everything. Just totally blown away by, the technical aspect of it. I was at the time learning how to play guitar. I knew a little, but wasn't all that great. And this stuff made me better. It made me want to be a better guitar player, a better musician. So I think I'm going to probably have to split those two albums in half. The next episode is going to be solid 2112. And I want to talk about, the concept side one. Wow, there's so much cool stuff just on side one. It's hard for me to want to, to not spend too much time on it. It's hard not to spend too much time on it because it's so awesome. But there's so much good stuff on the other side. So many, there were fan favorites on the other side that wound up, Passage to Bangkok wound up being a song. I mean, that's a song they still play today because it was such a great song. Straight ahead rock and roll, not all that. It wasn't a difficult song to play. Unless you're a drummer. But 2112, it would be tough for me to not. I mean, I could spend an entire hour just talking about the guitar riffs, the way the songs were put together, the production, how important, Terry Brown. That was the moment Terry Brown became the world's greatest prog producer. Period. And you got to admit, Terry Brown's the fourth member of Rush. He truly is. He's the fourth member. Without Terry Brown, Rush doesn't happen the way it happens. Without Terry Brown, Moving Pictures never happens. Never happens. And it was Terry Brown, in large part, that was so into what they were doing on 2112. He thought the concept was really great. So he really put his heart into it, and it shows in the final product. So, Terry Brown's equally as important in a lot of their early success and a lot of their later success. But, wow, without him, no 2112. But, again, without Caress of Steel, there's no 2112. Caress of Steel flopped so bad. They thought, that's it, we're done, we're dead, the band's over. We got a contract for one more record. We'll make one record. We'll make it our way. We'll just give one of these to the record company and say, we're going to do whatever we want to do. You're going to dump us anyway. So at this point, it doesn't matter what record we hand you. You're not going to like it anyway. It doesn't really matter. And that's how 2112 came to be. Neil came up with a great concept and wrote a ton of lyrics for it. And Geddy and Alex are banging out some of the coolest licks that have ever been played on guitar and bass, ever. And so is Neil. Neil's just killing it. Just killing it, man. But, without Caress of Steel, 2112 never happens. If Caress of Steel had been popular, if they had changed and done what the record company wanted them to do, 2112 would have never happened. They would have bent and become a corporate band. Period. They would have been, a shill for the record company. And that's not what they wanted to do. They wanted to be themselves. They wanted to play prog rock. They were influenced by Yes. And, at the time, Yes is out, Genesis is out, King Crimson is out. All these really, truly great prog acts are happening. And Rush wanted to be a prog act, and they had it going on. But 2112 is going to be an episode all by itself. I'm not going to let this run long. The last one I did was... God, it was almost an hour. I just jabbered like a freaking fanboy, literally just drooling over him like I'm a 14-year-old girl at an NSYNC concert. But yeah, I'm a fanboy. I can't help it. But as a musician, I get to at least say, well, I respect them for their musical precision and their ability to transcend the. Yeah, it's bullshit. I'm a fanboy. I love them to death. I do love the technical aspect of what they do. They are such accomplished musicians, and lest we forget, they were accomplished musicians on the first album. Okay, on Fly By Night, Geddy Lee and Alex were, I mean, better than any second album band as musicians go, better than any second album musicians out there, period. Maybe not Led Zeppelin. Sorry, guys. Zepp is God. But, I mean, Geddy's style and his technique was really, really focused on Fly By Night. He was really there. I mean, he was almost 100% of what he was going to be by the time they got to 2112. And then, and they just kept getting better and better and better. Alex was the same way. Neil, after Rutsy left and Neil came on, there were some growing pains on Fly By Night. There was some material that Neil wrote, as far as lyrics went. There were some lyrics that Geddy wrote, and the music was very, very different. You could tell the differences in what Neil had written lyrics for, and the boys had just, and what Alex and Geddy had just written music for. On those ones, the music was very, very technical. They were already getting that prog thing going and really doing a good job of it. So, but the difference is, though, Neil didn't write all the material on Fly By Night. Not all of it, all the lyrics anyway. He wrote most of it, but he didn't write all of it. Memories, he didn't write Memories. Or was that Lessons? I'm sorry, Lessons. It was a good song. I mean, it's a good song. It's not my favorite. It's good. It's got a kind of pretty little acoustic opening. Alex is modulating, chords from C to F or rather from D to F to C, and it's not all that difficult. It's not all that rough. Again, simple writing, simple music for relatively, we'll say, uncomplicated lyrics. I won't say they're simple, but they're uncomplicated. They're just about what they were going through at the time. So Fly By Night, though, wow, what an album. So different from the first album, too. So radically different. And then Caress of Steel was another step in that direction. I think they just bit off a little bit more than they could chew at that moment. It wasn't time yet for that prog concept album. It wasn't time yet. Not from them, anyway. 2112 would do it for them, though. And they needed Caress of Steel. They needed the failure of Caress of Steel to bring about the success of 2112. Not all bad things are bad. So Caress of Steel gave us 2112, and you can't argue with that. If you're a Rush fan, you can't argue with that. So, all right, that's pretty much all for now. That was a little bit of Fly By Night, a little bit of Caress of Steel. I wanted to talk a little bit about those open chords, those open strings that Alex uses so often. I love that stuff. It's just beautiful. We're not going to go long on this one, so I'm going to wrap this up. Episode 3, ladies and gentlemen, coming up very soon. Episode 3 is 2112, the whole album. The concept side 1, and the non-concept side 2. We're going to talk about it all. I hope you are enjoying these. If you do, give a like, give a share. Leave a comment. Tell me to shut up. Tell me to stop. Whatever you want to do. I don't care. It's not like I'm going to listen to you anyway. So, hey, remember, stay in school. Don't do drugs. Love, Rush.